All right, welcome everybody. Welcome back to Something Spacey. In this episode today, we have a very special guest for you again. My name is John, one of your hosts.
I go under many guises. One may or may not be Christian.
How very mysterious of you.
Mysterious.
And then we have our special guest today.
Yes, this is Seth. Glad to be back here again. This is fun.
Welcome back. It's been
back,
quite
Seth.
some time, and we're really excited.
It's been some time.
Quite some time.
It's been a long time. Yeah, a long time
Yeah.
to speak kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, really long.
Whole 10 minutes.
But yeah, so for this episode, what we're going to be talking about is Seth specifically. Just about Seth, for those of you that didn't watch the last episode, is the curator of astronomy at the Museum of Arts and Sciences in Daytona Beach.
Preeminent institution for the
Yes.
Daytona Beach.
He's a planetarium curator, one of the members of the Royal Society of Planetariums, and all of that wonderful things here. And
Well, I didn't even know that.
and so
I'm at this podcast.
So we're going to be talking about what it's like to be the head of a planetarium, what it's like to be a curator at a museum, like that kind of stuff. And so I'll just start off with the first question here. How does one become a curator?
Yes.
What did you do to get this position?
Paid someone to
Okay,
paid someone off. No,
You guys for the next episode then.
yeah, that's
That's
it.
how I got here. Wait a minute. Yeah.
We're done.
I don't know.
You just pay for it and you're in there. No, I've said this before, and it's a story I tell quite a bit about. I kind of accidentally fell into the position. I originally wasn't intending to teach people about the universe or to curate exhibits. It just
I love that. Hold on. Hold on. I just kind of fell into teaching people about the universe.
Yeah, I know. That's sort of
I just
casual.
love that.
It's casual,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely falling into it, if you want to say that, into a career I absolutely had no idea I'd be part of, trying to be a pilot at Embry-Riddle, to eventually, discovering I loved teaching astronomy. And then the job morphed into more responsibilities as that, kind of naturally happens, right? And then, eventually curating exhibitions and doing all sorts of things. I didn't do the standard route. A lot of people will go to school for their, they'll do history or something, or they'll do museum studies, or they'll do, anything related to the museum arts, or the museum, studies, or whatever you want to call it. And, I took a different approach, more of a kind of work your way down from the bottom up, I guess, approach, and sort of learning it along the way. So it's a lot of fun. I kind of learned the long and sort of maybe you want to say dirty way, not, and what I mean by that is like get your hands dirty kind of way.
Yeah.
Right.
Kind of way, so just doing all the little things and learning from that experience, and like I said, having my hand in all sorts of projects to eventually, doing what I do now, which is, again, run the planetarium and then put together exhibits every so often, and to do outreaches and to write about it and to do live streams and to do podcasts. Hey, there you go. And to do all these sorts of cool things too, so it fell into, I just enjoyed it, and I love the museum environment. And if you ask anyone in a museum, especially a smaller to medium sized one, you get to do so many different things, and that was what really was fun about it. So
I think Christian and I can definitely sort of relate to that, since, I mean, full disclosure, we do work for Seth, but
I'm just in the D room, John.
we only in the D room.
Only in the D room. Yes.
But I think we can both sort of relate to that. Of neither Christian nor I went to school for museum studies, but now we're in an environment, in a job that both of us love with a passion, and the museum world as a whole has just sort of opened up before our eyes, and we're like, holy shit, this is awesome. Like, this is amazing.
No, exactly. I think we kind of fell. It was. I think for us, it was a bit of word of mouth, but also it was kind of like, the museum, we kind of gravitated, at least I did. I one of the reasons why I work here is because I ended up going to this museum as a patron, and this environment, the preservation of the culture, at least of the community, or of arts and sciences overall, that's something that I gravitated towards. I wanted to enjoy being immersed in things that I might not be familiar with, or just just learning in general. It's kind of a beautiful place, a museum. It's a really important institution, and it's one of those things that we did kind of fall into, but at the same time, I think we kind of gravitated towards it from the get go. You know, it,
Sure.
it
Yeah.
it's it's the planets align, kind of, so to speak, I guess, as
Right.
far as we're concerned. But
No pun intended for some
no
spacey.
pun intended. No, yeah.
Yeah, we don't do
Um,
space buns here. So.
no, not at all.
Absolutely not. No, we restricted space puns. The first law of Something Spacey. You don't talk about space.
Don't do that.
Yeah, and one question to sort of bring it back to you, Seth, is, and Christian and I can talk
Yeah.
about this a little bit afterwards, but what has museum life been like for you?
Oh yeah, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it's been all over the place. Like I said, working and having my hand in so many different things. I've experienced so much. Our museum. I've been through
Absolutely.
a flood at our museum. Our
Oh,
museum
wow.
flooded at
Jeez.
one point and shutting everything down. Going through that was a wild process. And moving things out. Artwork out and doing all that, and then dealing with the planetarium being closed for a while, and then construction of all these buildings, and eventually, running this old planetarium, which was a good experience because I saw how you do things in the old way, and a planetarium that was open in 1972. And I was the last one to run this old facility, and then we had finally a chance to build a new one. And then all of a sudden, I'm in an architect's meeting giving advice to all these people, like what they think I want in the planetarium, which that was crazy,
That's wild. Yeah.
And then figuring out how to put one together and develop it from the ground up. Those things are, absolutely amazing. And then the portable planetarium, and then I won that, and so that's like a whole story in of
Yeah,
itself.
that's a
And
story.
I won the planet, and so that became like a whole thing too. That became its own outreach program, and I had to figure that out too, how to do that like on the cheap, and do it with like where it was really cool, but at the same time low cost, and then built that up to a thing,
I think it works.
its own stature within the planetarium department. Then to be able to build a staff, and so it's been really interesting, all sorts of places, and I've seen so many different things and so many different eras of the museum. It's been it's been a wild ride. Sometimes I have to kind of remind myself of that, when things are running so smoothly and perfectly. It's just like, wow, we saw a lot of different things happen.
Yeah,
Oh,
how far we've
there.
come.
Yeah, to
Right.
get to where we
I mean,
are.
we're dealing
now,
with things now, even to this day. Trying to manage a planetarium in the middle of a changing world in a pandemic.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
And I have to say, I think we handled it relatively well. We were able to host an event recently as well with the landing of Perseverance, and so I think with all that's going on in the world, the knowledge that you've gained over these years from the old planetarium and developing the model that we have today, definitely sets us apart and definitely
Yeah, for
helps
sure.
in these moments. So yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no,
very
I think that's good to bring that up. Yeah,
yeah.
and so it has helped us. Learning, going through all those different eras, has helped us prepare. For this crazy time that we're in now, when it comes to the pandemic. And I think we've navigated that successfully. Which is awesome. But at the same time, with all that stuff, I mean, it's been a lot of fun. Like all these different things. It's challenging. There's like a lot of different challenges, and it's like, if you ask anyone, you work at a job, and like, of course, there's so many different jobs out there, but you do a specific thing. I think at a museum we do everything.
Yes.
So it's like I've had to advertise, I've had to write, I've had to present,
Run
we
AV,
have to, I have to design an exhibit. I never thought I'd be designing the layout of an exhibit. I'm at another time we'll be in the planetarium fixing a projector and pulling it apart, and then I'll be on the floor cleaning a seat, or vacuuming the floor, which it's all very important stuff, and then I'll be teaching a class for kids and on aviation or something, and then or a rocket class or astronomy class, and then doing that to all sorts of things, so it's like I've worn so many hats, and anyone that's worked here, it's you kind of see something similar, or have a similar experience. So that's been like really interesting.
I feel like that's almost sort of a uniquely museum experience to have like that fully sort of hands-on, almost interdisciplinary experience of cross departments, cross platforms, like across all of it.
For sure.
That was one thing that Adam Savage touched in one of his tested videos when they went to the Smithsonian. He was reviewing the makerspace that they have there, where they 3D print models of basically like skeletal remains, like the skull of Homo habilis or something like that, so that guests or children or whatever can use those 3D printed models as tactile instruments that they can touch and hold and learn from that, and how that it's truly a cross-departmental thing working in museums. And I think that planetariums are no exception to that.
Oh, absolutely not.
Sure.
I think we share a lot in that, as far as our own department's concerned, because we're doing so many different things as hosting these events and doing all this. We ourselves try to, you and I, John, we built that the box for the donations.
Right.
And that's something separate from our normal duties, but we were there in our own makerspace trying to make something that felt as though it belonged to the museum aesthetically, but also functioned.
And the model for Saturn too, as well. Yeah.
Which is now in the back, not being used.
It'll see the light of day.
One day when people are allowed to interact.
You built it just the right time for us to go into lockdown and then close for a while. So and then not have outreaches like everyone else does.
Yeah. Seth, do you have a favorite experience at the museum? Like, what is your favorite? What is your favorite sort of thing to do as a curator of astronomy?
That's another great question. Think about that one. But I think one thing that's still fun to do, and it's basically goes back to why we do it, why we do what we do there, is like the stargazing events, or just going outside, because that's literally what we're trying to get people to do, and we should probably do it ourselves from time to time,
Absolutely.
And, we're like, hey, you should do this thing. It's kind of like a doctor prescribing things, and then they never do what they prescribe, kind of thing. So I think it's a little bit of that for me when it comes to what I do. We teach about the night sky and to go out and find it, and it's so much fun to do it with guests, and then set up a telescope, and when that's all cooking and it's going well and the sky is clear, of course, that's a big one. We don't have astronomers bad luck, or luck as we call it.
The worst enemy of an astronomer is an angry cloud.
I know.
We
we summon the clouds. That's we're really good at that.
If you want rain, plan a sky watching event.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that one for the most part, just because like that's like you're still with the guests, so that's still fun, and then you get to do the real thing, and it's fun too because I love technology, so it's still fun to like bring a telescope out. So you get like it's like a triple whammy. You get like education, you get technology, and then you get like nature, kind of all tied into one experience, and then you also have the the connection with the guests, and then when they get to look through the telescope and they're like, whoa, and they have that reaction, man, it's so awesome. Like when they they honestly will think like it's the biggest compliment ever when they're like, you hung a Saturn in front of that scope, you know?
Right.
Where it's
Yeah.
just like, it sounds so silly, you know, like, yeah, you just
That's not
dangling a
real. Oh
Saturn,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And I'm like, no, that's real. And they're like, no way. So it's those simple moments, I think, you know, are still really enjoyable, you know. And you know, and
That,
obviously doing shows too, like, you know, especially you get like, you know, it's fun to do shows, especially when a crowd really enjoys it too. You know, you get really a great crowd that's like loving it, you know. And those moments are
Yeah.
like you can't replace those. It's kind of like, you know, a
oh, for
comedian
sure.
will have like a really good set at night, you know, you know, in their club or something, and they just feel it, you know, and the crowd's connected and they're
They connect with
grooving
the
and jiving.
audience.
It's
Yeah,
a
they're
similar, I
feeling it
think,
too. Yeah,
feeling, yeah, when you're up there
absolutely.
doing a night sky tour, you know. And you know,
Yeah.
so I really enjoy those, or you know, a field trip too. I actually really like doing them for like a show for field trips, which we
Yeah.
can do
I
now. But
really love, yeah, I love the younger kids that
yeah,
we
it's I
teaching.
used to get
It's a huge
intimidated by it
excitement.
a little bit, just because
Absolutely.
I'm like,
Yeah.
how do I teach these kids? And like, oh man, I'm gonna make them bored. And then I
I know. Yeah,
realized just be goofy and silly and be yourself, and which you should do for all the shows, but especially for kids, and just
Sure.
have and really just like let loose. Then you realize like how much fun it is. So you can really like goof around with them, and you can try to get them to laugh, and you're just trying to like really, you know, go crazy, and you get to really flex the planetarium as much. You know, you can kind of get
Absolutely.
away with it
oh
there
yeah, that
and show
wow
them the cool
factor.
stuff.
Like kids love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I love that. That's one of my
So
favorite things about this job is just the
yeah,
impact that we can have on future generations. You know,
yeah, for
it's
sure.
incredibly intimidating to me as well. But like that's I feel why I'm here is because someone in the past did the same thing for me, and you know it's really cool when you have that opportunity when you have kids who love space and want to learn about these things and maybe they didn't have that opportunity in the past to really kind of
Hmm.
imagine you
Sure.
know like the future in space you know and these awesome things and when you tell them this like hey you're part of the Mars generation you know you might be going up there yourselves and you know like you know you show them these amazing places in our own solar system what we're doing and you know technologically to get there and you can really see the kind of like sparks in their in their like mind going off, like the cogs going off. And it's like you know, he's right. You know, you know, this is something that's happening in my lifetime. You know, this is something I can take
Hmm.
a part in, and that really gets kids to want to get into these fields, these STEM fields, and you know, I always say if my entire time at the museum, if I can inspire one person, one kid to want to do something you know in these fields to better humanity themselves I feel like i've
Yeah.
I've done it. You know I've had a good career you know and so I
Yeah.
I
love
want to
that.
I want to
That's
inspire
my
two,
favorite
at
thing.
least
Yeah,
two. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Two,
Yeah.
okay, well you're
Yeah.
far more on
We gotta one up
you
you.
inspire one, I'll inspire two.
okay. Fair.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, teaching kids is just like it's something special.
Yeah.
One of the things that is always in the back of my mind, though, teaching the younger grades especially, and Seth, I don't know if you feel this way now or if you sort of ever have,
Mhm.
but one of the sort of fears that I have too of getting up there and teaching a younger audiences or even a more average audience, I guess too, is saying the wrong thing, of
Yes. Okay.
of getting up there and holding the title of educator and teaching this stuff as if it's gospel.
Mhm.
And uh, obviously we do research for the shows, or we've been doing it long enough that it's sort of almost second nature, like pre-programmed shows in our brain.
Mhm.
But I don't, is that a fear that you still have now? And if it is, then how do you get over that?
Mm.
Yeah, no, that's really great to bring that up, because I think that's a healthy thing to have, because you want to make sure that you're saying the correct thing. And of course, like, I think this is any planetarium curator, director, or educator, or whatever you want to call them, in any other planetarium. Everyone has a moment where they've said something incorrect or wasn't right, exactly right,
That's
you know, or it's like you'll remember later. I was like, oh, that was not right,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you just kind of just realize that, like I said the wrong thing, and that's
Right.
okay, like we all make mistakes and we all try to do our best to fix it. But yeah, I still think about that from time to time and have to remind myself, or if someone comes up and says, hey, I don't think that's right, and to like, put any kind of ego aside and be like, you know what, I should definitely check that, and make sure.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely.
One of my first like early on when I was pretty new to the planetarium, fairly new, I've been there for a little while, is for the longest time, and this relates to a professor at Embry-Riddle actually that you all know, and for the longest time when we used to do a show called Explorers of Mauna Kea, and it was a show about the telescopes in Hawaii, and it was is what's called a canned show. So these are the old shows we used to run where it was run on slide projectors and it ran on a tape. The tape would then cue this slide projector on a DOS computer. So the tape would be
like a Christmas show that we
yeah,
have.
that used to be it. Our Season of Light was a show.
Right.
Explorers of Mauna Kea.
That's my
Hubble
favorite show
Vision.
that we have.
Yeah, I know.
You can tell it's from another time.
I love it. There's just something about it that is
it has
just
it's
great.
like a rustic planetarium feel
Yeah.
to it,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. So it is one of those shows. Explorers of Mauna Kea was actually a pretty good one actually for those. But again, they used slides and they used, very kind of primitive early planetarium technology. And my boss at the time, the curator of astronomy then, he had told me when we were as we introduced the show, that, introduce and you tell people, why are the telescopes in Hawaii? Because they're at this latitude. And I mentioned a certain latitude. And I'm terrible because I was born in Hawaii and I should know the latitude there.
Yeah.
But I was saying this latitude, and again, I got it from him, so I was pretty certain. I never looked it up. I just went through. So then I was running the show, and this professor came to the show, and I kind of knew who he was, and just learning who he was. And I introduced the show, and I say it very confidently, like, this is Explorers Mauna Kea, and this shows about the telescopes in Hawaii because the Hawaii is in this latitude. And then I say it, and I looked at the professor's face, and he made a weird, like, what? Like, kind of tilted his head kind of moment. So I'm like,
okay.
Whoa. So I ran the show. It kind of is automated a little bit, and then I do a quick night sky tour after. And then after it's over, it all went well. He comes up, it's like, oh, good show. And then he's like, I don't think the latitude is right. I think it's like, a different latitude than what you said. And I was like, no, I'm certain it's this latitude. Like I doubled down, like. No, I think it's
man.
So then I looked it up later, and he was right, of course, because and I was like,
we know this professor, right? We're not going to throw names out.
Yeah. So yeah, you guys know who he is. So I work with him all the time. He's like my great friend now, and so it's like,
because I had I think you know this, I had a very similar experience where I was doing a normal Sky Tonight show.
Yeah.
Or it was a Flight to the Universe. It was one of those shows.
Yeah.
And I had this professor who was a seasoned astrophysicist with another who was also a seasoned astrophysicist.
Right.
And a friend of theirs who apparently was also a seasoned astrophysicist. Who was
You're like, oh boy.
And I knew him because I had a class with him. And as soon as I saw them, I'm like, this is gonna be great. And so I did my show, and sure as sunshine, they come up to me and he was like, hey, it's a great show, but the that you had on your stars, you need to be a little more specific. You said it was this thing. In fact, it is these things. And it's just like, okay, I'm sorry. And I feel like we've had the same experience with the same guy.
So Christian, I'm actually
person, but
really,
what are you talking about?
Okay.
Christian, I'm actually really happy that you brought up that story.
Yes.
Because this whole thing that we're talking about, we had a special guest at the museum, Dame Jocelyn Bell. For those of you who don't know, is one of the most famed astrophysicists that there is currently. She discovered pulsars, and if you don't know what that is, it's essentially the core of a dead star, that the neutrons are packed so tightly that it's spinning at a very, very, very fast rate and emitting uh, radiation out of both ends of its poles, basically. And so Jocelyn Bell came to speak at our museum, and this whole thing again that we're talking about, she talked about it in one of her speeches that she gave, and it's called Imposter Syndrome. It's the whole phenomenon that you feel like, as she put it, that someone is going to realize that you're not as smart as you believe that you are, or they believe that you are, and they'll realize that it's a terrible mistake that they've made and fire you on the spot, and then you'll end up homeless and in the streets and all of that wonderful stuff to happen. Right. And I think that, and again, she's not the only one that has talked about this. I heard this on Adam Savage, on him talking about it too. And so I think it's a very normal thing to have, but it's fascinating to hear, Seth, your perspectives on this, and your, whether or not, again, you still feel this way, even though you are at the top. Like, there's no one really above you.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great to bring up imposter syndrome, because it's like I understand that quite a bit.
Absolutely.
And it's like with any science, the more you dig into it, the more you realize how much you don't know.
Right.
And so, and that's why I love watching other people do it too, or present, or other people lecture, because as many times you do a star show, there's always so much to learn, and you get so in your ways on how to talk about something that I'll still listen to someone else's and be like, huh, that's interesting, you know? And I'll be like, that's an interesting way to think about it. Absolutely. And I've done the show a million times. I talked about Orion a million times. Then I hear someone else talk about Orion. I'm like, that's a great way to explain it, you know?
Yes.
And I still get that all the time with things, even in small conversations. I hear one of you guys or someone else, you know, talk about something, or you word something a certain way, and then I'll pay attention to that. And then I go, oh, I love how you constructed that sentence about that thing. Right. Man, like, that's really clever, you know? Or it's like, man, I wouldn't have, you know, thought about it that way, or broken it down that way, you know? And so I have to remind myself of that. And when I listen to other people, it helps me too, because I realize, like, oh, that's a cool way of thinking about it. So
I think we all do. I think that's kind of how we learn. It's kind of the social thing where we gain a new perspective when we're kind of listening, even if we've heard how they've presented a show. It's always like a very kind of offhanded comment on something, or just a way someone presents something. You know, it really changes your perspective. I walked in to Nicole, another educator that we have in the planetarium. I'll just leave it at Nicole, unless she wants to come on. It's for like 10 seconds in her Flight Through the Universe show. And that 10 seconds was almost life-changing in how it's very weird. She presented the transition between the Galilean moons in such a way to where I was like, why am I not doing that?
Yeah, for sure.
And it was so well thought out as far as the planetarium show goes, and so efficient, that I ended up adopting that. And it was just cool. Me walking in, just getting ready for work, and seeing how one of our teammates does something. And so we can really gain a lot of knowledge by kind of that shared way in which we do things. But I wanted to mention really quickly, you know, how we present things at the planetarium. And I think one of the keys is the kind of object of science being a kind of quest for knowledge. And we don't want to convey this idea that what we're saying is gospel. Because the whole thing about the scientific method, and the whole thing about the idea of science, is that there are a lot of things that we do not know. There are a lot of things that we believe that we know, but may change if we get new evidence, and that's the key evidence.
I mean, a perfect example of that is my Search for Life show that I do. We've shortened the shows because of COVID.
Yes.
And so I had like shortened the script in my mind basically to fit some evidence that came out a few months ago about Venus and phosphine gas in the atmosphere. And I would go to Mars and talk about that. Obviously, you can go listen to the last episode. We talked about it. But then I would go to Venus and talk about that, where things start to get a little crazy. and then Europa after that. But now that they've updated the science and the evidence on that, that it was sort of just like a one-off thing, and it's not verifiable. I've since cut that out of the show, and if we lengthen the shows, I might bring it back and talk about that. Not as in depth, but just a mentioning of it. But yeah, that's a perfect example of how we adapt as planetarians.
That's right.
Yes,
Oh,
in prestigious role of planetarian.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure, yeah.
So by Neil deGrasse Tyson himself.
Yeah, no, he had to remind me of that one time.
Yes, he did. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah. Oh, quick. Yeah. It was at the kind of a big space conference thing, if you want to call it that. For it was a President Obama's it was a big space thing that he did to talk about the commercial space industry and to kind of kickstart that and all that kind of stuff. And he invited a whole bunch of people, and luckily I know the right people that helped get me into this thing. I had no business being there among all these people. And then I saw him and Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's like a big time figure in the planetarium world.
Oh yeah.
And everyone, podcasts and on TV and all that kind of great stuff. He's well known, his books and all that. And I was like, I gotta say something to him, so I just all right, so I'm just gonna go up there and just say, hey, I introduce myself and say I work in a planetarium. And I go up to him and he quickly just goes, I go, hey, Neil, my name is Seth and I work at a planetarium too. I'm a planetarium guy, just like you. And he goes, it's planetarian. That's what we call ourselves. And then he walked away. That was everything he told me.
Oh man!
And not in a I'm gonna turn my back on it. He just was like, all right, I'm moving on.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, that's cool. Yes, planetarian. You're right. Planetarian is the term. And I knew the term. I just didn't. I wasn't using it at the moment. And so he reminded me of that. And that was my as long of interaction I had with Neil deGrasse Tyson. But he also has I rode the same bus he did to another conference room, and I sat right behind him, and I learned he has a very exquisite pen collection, and so he loves carrying pens. Yeah. And he loved, because when he signs autographs, he has these beautiful fountain pens, and he was bragging to this reporter, a space reporter, I think, who was sitting next to him, or someone, and was showing him these purple pen and this green one and these beautiful fountain pens that he always has on him, so he can sign his name in beautiful ways.
Of course. Okay.
That's so interesting.
So that's from another fellow planetarian. A little more.
Yes. From those in the know.
Yeah. Well, speaking of different museums and planetariums and planetarians, Seth, here's a cheeky question for you. Do you have a favorite museum aside from our own, obviously?
Aside from our own.
You're contractually obligated to say.
I know.
I have to say Museum of Earth Sciences.
Yeah.
In Daytona Beach, Florida.
All right, well, like John said, aside from ours.
Yeah, I'd say it's hard. This might be just too easy of an answer. It might be too easy, but it's hard to compare. It's hard to compare. It's with it, but it's definitely the Air and Space Museum for sure. And I'm talking in both sides of it too. There's the one on the mall and the one on the Udvar Hazy Center that's at Dulles.
For sure. Yeah.
That one too. It's just to see everything in a hangar, just kind of thrown into a hangar. It's wild. It's just to see all of it, and an Air and Space on the mall. Man, there's just
I've only been to the one on the mall. I haven't been to the big hangar one.
Yeah, they have different. The one on the mall is more museum like.
It is
typical museum.
Yeah.
The one in at Dulles, that one is definitely like a hangar, and it's just if you're just an aviation nut, it's so nice just to see airplanes just crammed.
That's
they
cool.
really did cram it, because there's a space shuttle in there, and a space shuttle. Discovery's there now. Used to be Enterprise.
Enterprise, yes, that's right.
Is in New York City now. But that, and then there's I think the Concorde jet, right, is there, and the Enola Gay.
Yeah, that's there.
and like all these rockets, like these jet rockets and these like things, it's just stuffed in there. And I'm an aviation person too, and it's just
Right.
like
Yeah.
mixture of that in
Three riddle
space.
kids sitting here,
Oh
talking
yeah, yeah.
about all
Air and
this.
space
Yeah.
is really,
Any group of
yeah,
riddle
that's
kids
like,
together, we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
airplanes.
Yeah.
that's
It's just-
that's really, yeah, that one for me, it's just that experience for that. And then the other one I will say, and it's not really a museum, and this might be kind of not fair to say, because it's like I'm going to be unbiased a little bit because my
Okay.
wife works there, but the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex.
Okay, well you mentioned it.
And that's not really a museum. That's technically, they call it a park, or they
Right.
but it's
Yeah.
museum like in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
I will always say one of the only ones that will still like, or exhibits that will take my breath away, is the Atlantis one is great if
Atlantis.
you want to see the shuttle.
Right.
But to see
I
the
was about to
Saturn
say,
V,
Okay,
in
yeah.
Ooh,
the
okay.
building that's currently closed now, unfortunately, because of pandemic,
Right.
but normally open, you go in there, and to see the scale of that rocket that was built for the 60s.
Yeah,
to go to the
it is
moon.
mind bending.
When you go in there, I still, every time I go in, I have to like stop and look and just like marvel at it, and that's not in just one museum.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I've ever had experience similar to that in any other museum, like, or facility or an exhibit.
Yeah, and if you out there haven't seen it, it is massive.
Dwarfing. Yeah.
This rocket is mind-bendingly massive. So yeah, no, I get that. That's crazy though.
Yeah, for sure. That's it just blows my mind, and that's like the open my like jaw drop kind of moment. Like it really does that for me, and like you feel it in your chest and your being. Like when you're in there, you feel the power of it, and it's not even moving, and it's just sitting in there. People are mulling around like no big deal, but I'm just in there, just like, oh man.
There's a food court underneath it, so yeah.
Yeah.
Like you get your chicken fingers and like fries underneath.
Exactly. Yeah.
The
The lunar lander that was there used to just hang above that food court, and no one paid attention to it. They did put it back on the ground, fortunately, but no one. It used to hang like, oh, no big deal. It's just a lunar lander. It's like, no, that's like a backup one. That's like
the most American thing I can think of, honestly, is like I'm eating like chicken strips underneath like one of the most like advanced machines ever built.
I know, and like, people are not really paying attention. I know. They
put it back on the ground so people will pay attention to it. Like, look at me.
It's great. It's so much better. Yeah, it's such a great spot. But yeah, for sure. So I'd say those ones, just because they kind of link into what what I enjoy and love to teach about.
For sure.
Okay. Yeah.
About. So yeah, that's a good
For
one.
sure. Yeah, Christian, do you have a favorite museum? I don't think we've asked that on the show.
The Museum of Arts and Sciences.
Well, aside from us, because obviously that will always have a special place in all of our hearts.
Oh, I've been to a few throughout the country. I lived in Hawaii for a little while. Kind of a side story. And there are two museums that are in Hawaii that I love. One is the Bishop Museum.
Yeah, I love that place. It's great too.
Yes. Yeah, Bishop Museum is wonderful, and they have a small planetarium. It's pretty nice. The museum itself is beautiful. It's like three or so stories inside, and it's kind of like this inward balcony to where you can see this beautiful whale skeleton that's inside, kind of like a
that's cool
biology, kind of a natural history museum rather. But I wouldn't say that that's my favorite. I love that museum. Even the the Honolulu Museum of Art, wonderful museum. I love that. But I would have to say that my favorite probably would be the San Antonio Museum of Art. I love that place. That was I think it's in the heart of San Antonio, and it's a museum of art, but it ties history into that. So it's almost a history museum. Kind of going through kind of your standard, like it goes through Egyptian history, European history, and then it goes into more modern art. And it's the history of humanity through the eyes of art, and I love that. And they present it in such a beautiful fashion. And I love that museum. I think it all boils down to the one time I've only been there once, but the one time that I've been there was so impactful because it was such a wonderful day, and I had time from all of my duties being in San Antonio to enjoy that. And so I would have to say it's probably a mix. It's probably a close fight between the San Antonio Museum of Art, which I've only been to once but had such a big impact to me, and the Honolulu Museum of Art. So two art museums
Interesting.
that oddly enough, being a planetarian and having such a big impact with these art museums. And I know this is going to be weird, and I know we're not supposed to say the Museum of Arts and Sciences, our museum, but as far as the sciences go, having an impactful moment in my life, with regards to wanting to work within STEM, it is our museum. I went here as a kid, and I saw a planetarium show at our own museum as a kid, and that left an incredible impact on me, a very important impact on me. And I think as far as the love of STEM, where that kind of originated from, is our museum. It wasn't when Seth was here, but
Right.
nothing against that, but it had to have been the late '90s. And so, unless you were here in the late '90s, Seth,
no, not at all.
it was sometime there. So I think that might have been when we were still part of the Volusia County school system, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so it was that curriculum. And I know there's a lot with our school system nowadays or even back then, having this issue, but I think that curriculum really kind of stuck, and I had an impactful moment. They showed the ideas of what the International Space Station was supposed to look like with, I think, a slide, because this was the old analog projector. And they just launched the first module of the International Space Station.
That's cool.
Big here's what we believe it's going to look like. It's being a modular space station. And they showed us an image that I don't think was what it turned out to be, but whatever.
Some like Von Braun sketch, sort of thing.
It was probably based off the Freedom Space Station. That was the original American one.
So I believe so. Yeah,
it's probably based off of that one.
If you look at a picture, and I should probably look up a picture of that, that's probably exactly
that's probably
after
the Freedom one.
But that left a massive impact in my life. Think about that to this day. It's like, that's the things that we can make. Those are that's so cool. And I'm living in the generation to where, like, I can see this happening, and it did, and that's great.
That's a really good segue into our last question of the night for this episode. I know.
Okay.
Oh, my favorite museum?
Yes.
Mine. Well, it's obviously the Museum of Arts and Sciences.
We're all saying that.
But aside from that, I mean, I would say I had a similar experience to you, Christian, where I've only been to a museum once, but it had such an impactful experience on me while I was there. And that would be the California Academy of Sciences out in San Francisco.
Cool, very cool.
I guess it's a museum. I think it is, but the name wouldn't indicate that. But essentially, I had sort of a Saturn V moment, like you were talking about, Seth, there with their biosphere that they have. So you walk into the museum, and to give you a frame of reference, just how crazy this place is, the roof is wavy hills of grass on this like super modern metallic sort of structure. And within those hills of grass, they have portholes, windows that shine inside the big expanse of the museum. And you walk in, and one of the first things that you see is this gigantic glass sphere that they have in the middle that looks like an alien spaceship that has just landed there and taken residence. And inside this sphere, they have a tropical rainforest in the heart of San Francisco, where tropical things don't exist. And so one of the things that I remember is they have a bottom layer of where the water is for the tropical rainforest, where like the river, quote unquote, is. And they have a walkway, like an archway underneath the river. So you can see all the fish swimming above you and all that kind of stuff. And then you can go inside the dome. And there's a spiraling staircase that goes around up to the top floor of the museum. that takes you through the different layers of the rainforest and tells you about all of those different layers in the forest itself and all of the life that it takes to create this, of all of the trees and the insects and the birds and all of that kind of stuff. And it's one of the most remarkable experiences for me, because I mean, as both of you know, and we talked about sort of in the last episode, like biology has always been near and dear to my heart. And Jurassic Park is one of my favorite films.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, just to hear that. And so this too kind of segues back into our last question of the night for you, Seth, is what, if anything, do you have a favorite moment that you can remember in your life that sort of focused your attention towards space? I know you said you kind of fell into being a curator of astronomy, but do you have something that you saw, like Christian's experience in Hawaii with seeing the stars there? Do you have an experience like that you were just like, oh my God, space is really cool?
Yeah. Like I said, I've always loved science, and I always loved watching science programs, and anytime, and it could be anything. I loved it. I thought, anything to do with science, and it could be a nature show. It could have been, even a space show. Like it just grabbed my attention, and I loved to watch it, and I was kind of known for that, and in my household and by my friends too. So among my friends, I was kind of like the nerdy guy that always like the science of something.
Yeah.
And so that was definitely true for a good part of my younger life. I always liked it, but yeah, I love space, but like I said, it did start late, oddly, for me, which was in college, because, and this is funny, and this is kind of a funny, very simple way to fall into astronomy and space, is I can kind of credit, ironically, Stellarium for this. So the program that you can download for free.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. It's interesting. So Stellarium is the program you download for free. It's been free for a long. It's actually developed by a French. It's like a team of like a French. I don't know if it's like out of Paris or whatever, but there's like software developers that made this open source software.
I'll put a caveat on that really quick, that it's free for the PC if you guys want to download it at home. But if you want it on your phone, you have to pay. I think it's like $5 or $10.
Yeah, it's not much.
It's not much, but it definitely is worth it if you want. The mobile version.
It's totally free. Yeah, so it's like it's free on the PC, you're right, and on Mac and Linux and all that. They even have it for that too, which is great. And there's a web-based version too. It's free. It's you don't even have to install anything. You just go online too. They have a version of that. But I've been using that program since like its early days, and I discovered it like my freshman year of college. And I just, for some reason, I stumbled on it, and I got on. I'm like, this is fun. It's a night sky program. That's cool.
Career spur from that. Yeah.
So the reason why it got me interested in this is that I thought it was so magical. I don't know why this took me until I got to college to do this, and I love science and I love all of it. But I thought it was so cool that I could go and look at the stuff on Stellarium and then find it for real in the night sky.
Yeah.
I just thought that connection was like amazing. And then I thought like it was so cool to zoom into a star in Stellarium and then go and like find that star. And so I would like pull my roommates, get them out at night and be like, let's go to a dark place. Let's get out somewhere. Someone get their laptop. Let's get Stellarium on there. Yeah. And we just started doing that. And I was like, this is so much fun. I love this so much. Like I didn't realize how much I like stargazing. And just being able to locate the night sky. Because, even when I was younger, I was like, oh, the night sky, there's so much out there. I don't even know how I'm going to begin. But then I realized how accessible it was. And it just was like, it's almost like it released the floodgates of possibility. And I was just like, I could learn all this. It'd be really cool. So I picked up one of those like simple eyewitness books, that you get for like a subject on astronomy. And like from Barnes and Noble, and like I had picked it up. I'm like, I'm just gonna learn a little bit after I got Stellarium. I picked it up and started reading it, and then like my mind, it's like one of those like where I got sucked into the book. There's like a good GIF I could think of, an animation of someone opening a book and then them being like pulled into the book or something.
Oh man,
You know, I could think of something like that.
yeah.
Maybe it was a
Secrets.
reading rainbow thing or something where that
Yeah,
happens. I'm
yeah,
not sure.
yeah.
Something
Well, I
like
was
that.
thinking,
Yeah, we
yeah.
gotta,
Sucked into the
get
book or something.
armored.
So
Yeah,
I opened this and I started reading it. It's a very simple, you know, those eyewitness books have very, you know, a lot of pictures and illustrations, and they're very easy to read and stuff.
Still
But I
powerful
found
tool.
myself like I couldn't put it down. I was just like, oh my god, the you know, Pluto, that's so interesting. Oh,
Yeah.
this nebula, that's so cool. I was so obsessed with this book that I would actually bring it to class before class, and I was reading it before the professor was doing it. I was like, I love this. I love this.
Yeah.
You know, like
Oh,
and on to
man.
my regular class, and then back to my astronomy book, and then
Yeah.
it started from there. So it was like that, and then learning the sky with Stellarium, and I can credit a lot to that program. I still use it now, which is so funny.
Yeah.
Making me really love. And so the main thing wasn't Stellarium, it was the realization that I could figure this out, or that I could learn the sky, and that it's possible to, and just being able to go out and then like find it without even Stellarium or star chart. I was like, this is so cool that I can do this, you know? And and then it just formed from there, and then I just naturally learned the sky, and then, you know, I got interested in the planetarium, obviously, and then it starts from there. But yeah, it started late for me. It really did. In the particular, I love science entirely, but particularly astronomy and space and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, I can
is
relate
then.
to that, because I would definitely
So
say that it started late for me as well too in college.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah. So you know, it's you never know where you're. You know, at one point of your life where it will take you. You know, I always tell it to people is just don't expect college to always take you exactly where you think it's going to. You know, it could lead
absolutely
you
not.
to a whole nother place, and
Oh yeah.
still makes college worth it for me. You know, and like what I studied, it's because it helped me to lead me to where I'm doing now. So
absolutely. Yeah, I do. I wanna say that that's a really great inspirational point to leave it off at. But I have one more question for you.
sure, that's fine.
What do you have a favorite subject or topic or something to teach when you give your shows in the planetarium? Like, is there ever a question that you get that you're just like, ladies and gentlemen, now is my time. It has
Well,
come, and here is the answer you've all been waiting for.
Yeah. Yeah. So if the big question, well, first off, I love challenging questions, and that's really fun for me. I love to be able to work it out in my brain on the spot. Like usually I feel like that's a scary thing, but I love
Yeah.
that. And it's amazing what like your brain will find from all the stuff you've read or watched, you know,
Okay.
in the heat of the moment. Right now, I'll just like somehow my brain will just like make a connection and like, I can't believe I pulled that out of nowhere. I don't even know where. I can't remember when I last read that factoid, you know, somewhere, and it sort of you know, it happens. But yeah, I think a question about a lot of times, you know, about the real high level stuff are fun, like about you know, someone asks about like a black hole or something like that. I love getting into that, and those are fun. You know, concepts to get into. I love talking about nebula, or you know, a particular one, or how they work. You know, how a star is born and all that out of a nebula. So I love those kind of questions when it comes to that, either a nebula or like I said, a black hole. Those are fun because the black hole talk can get into all sorts of conversations about physics. You know, and so it can get into like what it's like to fall into it, and what's gravity, how does that work, what is gravity. You know, it leads to so many interesting conversations when you talk about a black hole, because you have to lay the groundwork first before I can tell you what a black hole is,
Right.
know? And so it makes it a longer question, you know, to answer, but it's a fun one. And then you get all these thought experiments that people have, you know. People start to go like, what ifs, and the what ifs are good because that's what you need to think, you know, deeper about a subject, you know. So
absolutely,
I think that's important, you know, in understanding those types of things. So yeah, black hole type talk, that's always fun, even though I don't understand like half of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
I love diving into it and trying my best to explain it to someone that doesn't know much about it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right.
Cool.
Well, I think we have taken up enough of your time today,
Yeah.
Seth.
It's all
So
good.
this is where we are going to leave off the episode for today. I hope that you all out there enjoyed this. Seth, do you want to, I know you said it in the last episode, but do you want to plug your social medias or whatever so people can hit
Yeah.
you up, find you?
Well, yeah. I think again, I'll mention again because it's becoming more near and dear to me, and it's related to Stellarium since I talked
Right.
all about that. Is those night sky tours we're doing
Absolutely.
online on YouTube?
Yeah.
Those are a lot of fun, and I know you guys have been part of it and helped make them too, and that's really great. It's been a fun thing to do during the pandemic is to make these weekly night sky tour videos. I gotta make one tomorrow actually.
Okay.
And I use Stellarium primarily to do that, but we always put them out there on Mondays on YouTube and on Facebook. I think on Instagram they put them out there too, and that's an
Yeah, they
important
do.
one. It's just called The Sky Tonight, and I've been getting better at putting them together and recording them and editing them, and so I definitely want to let people know to definitely check those out, and I'm trying to make them even better for the future, and to make them something that people want to tune into every week. So that's the main thing I'll mention, and I primarily use Stellarium, so it's a double thanks for Stellarium.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's where we're going to leave off the episode, and we'll put the links in the description to everything that we talked about, hopefully, in the description below. So, yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And as always, stay spacey. We will see you in the next one.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.